The Allen Line Company appreciates all of the dedicated carriers it takes to move loads across the U.S. Stay safe.
OOIDA, representing America's truckers since 1973, presents Landline Now with your host, Scott Thompson.
Welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us. We'll get a check on the latest news here in just a moment, but let's start with a quick peek at what we have in store for you over the next hour. In a bit, we'll get in our feelings a bit. Lower freight volumes and lower spot rates have been the norm for several months now, but are better times right around the corner? Owner-operators seem to think so. A new survey conducted by Truckstop and Bloomberg Intelligence yielded some interesting results about how people are feeling out there. And Truckstop Chief Relationship Officer Brent Hutto tells us about it. Then moving from one state to another as a professional truck driver can affect your commercial driver's license. We'll get into the ins and outs of changing states and your CDL with Alex Clark and David Grimes of CDL Legal. And finally, June is a busy month for spot freight. We'll check in with Stephen Pettit of DAT on the latest load posting activity numbers with some advice on lanes to watch as we head into the summer months. So plenty to get to on today's show. But first, the news with Ashley Blackford.
Thanks, Scott. The cost at the pumps went down 3 cents last week, according to the Energy Information Administration. A gallon of diesel now sits at $3.75 in the U.S. 9 of the 10 regions EIA tracks saw slight decreases, while Central Atlantic went up a penny per gallon. California saw the biggest drop at 6 cents per gallon. Meanwhile, ProMiles.com is tracking this week's numbers. They had the average Wednesday morning at $3.81 a gallon, down 2 cents from last week. Prices at the pump fell in all 10 regions they track, with the biggest drop on the West Coast at 6 cents a gallon, bringing the average there to $3.62. The dates for Brake Safety Week have been announced. The Commercial Vehicle Safety Alliance said this week that August 25th through the 31st will be Brake Safety Week. This is a commercial motor vehicle driver inspection and regulatory compliance enforcement initiative to shine a light on brake safety awareness. During the 7-day event, CVSA certified inspectors will conduct routine commercial motor vehicle inspections, focusing on brake systems and components. CMVs found to have brake-related out-of-service violations will be removed from roadways until those violations are corrected. Every year, CVSA focuses on certain components. This year, inspectors will focus on the condition of brake linings and pads. Brake lining and pad issues may result in vehicle violations, which could affect a motor carrier's safety rating. More than 500 pounds of methamphetamine was found recently in a flatbed trailer attempting to come into the U.S. from Mexico. U.S. Customs and Border Protection discovered the drugs on May 20th when officers encountered a 25-year-old man driving a commercial tractor hauling an empty flatbed trailer in Calexico, California. The driver was referred for further examination by CBP officers, along with the tractor and flatbed trailer. During the secondary inspection, officers discovered anomalies during a non-intrusive screening. A canine unit also responded and alerted CBP officers to the trailer. During the search, 172 packages were found concealed within the frame of the trailer. The contents of the packages were tested and identified as methamphetamine with a total weight of 523 pounds. CBP officers seized the narcotics, tractor, and flatbed trailer, while the driver was turned over to the custody of Homeland Security for further investigation. Public meetings have been scheduled for June and July for the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration's Truck Leasing Task Force. Virtual meetings will take place on Thursday, June 13th and Thursday, July 18th. The meetings will go from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern each day. The task force was established by Congress with the goal of ending predatory lease purchase agreements in the trucking industry. Discussion at the June 13th meeting will be on whether truck leasing agreements properly incentivize the safe operation of vehicles, including driver compliance with the hours of service regulations and laws governing speed and safety. In addition, there will be a public comment period that will allow truck drivers to share their personal experiences with lease purchase agreements. For more information and to learn how you can participate, you can visit our website at landline.media. If you have a Blue Star ELD, it has now been reinstated by the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration. As of May 22nd, the ELD that was previously revoked was re-added to the list of registered ELDs. The truck driver who ran a stop sign and crashed into a junior hockey team's bus in rural Saskatchewan in 2018 will be deported from Canada. CBC News reports that during an Immigration and Refugee Board hearing for Jaskirat Singh Sidhu, the Immigration Division of the board said that he couldn't consider humanitarian and compassionate factors and that he's required by law to issue him a deportation order. Sidhu's lawyer said that all that was required to deport him was proof that he's not a Canadian citizen and that he committed a serious crime. 16 people were killed in the crash and 13 others were injured. Sidhu, who is from India, pleaded guilty to dangerous driving. He was granted full parole last year after being sentenced to 8 years in prison. His lawyer said there are more legal and procedural steps to follow and that the former truck driver may not be deported for months or even years. The annual Roundup campaign to raise money for St. Christopher's Truckers Relief Fund has kicked off. Travel Centers of America recently announced the start of the campaign. This will give guests an opportunity to round their purchase up to the nearest dollar, with that amount going to aid professional truck drivers who are out of work due to illness or injury. Last year's effort raised $150,000. During this campaign, TA will also feature drivers on their website who have been helped by the St. Christopher's Fund. The fundraising effort will run through July 31st. New research priorities have been identified by the American Transportation Research Institute, finding new pathways to trucking careers, the impact of nuclear verdicts, cargo theft, cost of truck bottlenecks, and the federal excise tax cost-benefit analysis are what ATRI has identified as the top research priorities for 2024. The topics were identified by ATRI's Research Advisory Committee. The priorities are designed to address some of the industry's most critical issues, including workforce development, lawsuit abuse reform, and transportation infrastructure. More than $6 million has been announced for safer streets and roads in Kansas. Governor Laura Kelly announced this week that 6 communities in the state secured nearly $5 million in federal bipartisan infrastructure law funding, along with $1 million in matching funds from the Kansas Infrastructure Hub and Build Kansas Fund. The city of Topeka was granted $4.3 million of this funding, which will go toward Vision Zero, an effort to eliminate traffic fatalities and severe injuries among all road users. The $4.3 million for the state's capital is the third largest amount given in the country from the federal grant program. And finally, a truck driver in California got a scary surprise when he opened his mail recently. The Los Angeles Times reports that the 60-year-old truck driver opened up a package and found a live rattlesnake inside. The driver picked up the package and was driving when he asked his friend in the passenger seat to open the box. They pulled over and called 911 and animal control immediately after realizing what was inside. The article states that whoever sent the serpent put cotton balls in the box so postal workers wouldn't hear the snakes rattle. He estimates that the snake was around 2 feet long. Animal Control picked up the snake. A San Bernardino County deputy took a report and forwarded it to the U.S. Postal Inspection Service, who's handling the investigation. The article states that Animal Control doesn't believe it's possible that the snake slithered into the package and that it appears to have been sent intentionally. That's Landline Now News for today. I'm Ashley Blackford.
Thanks, Ashley. For updates on these stories and more from the trucking industry 24/7, check out our website, landline.media. From reporting and opinion pieces to pretty much anything in between, check it all out at landline.media. Coming up next, Brent Hutto of Truckstop joins the program to talk about a new survey that details how truck drivers are feeling out there, and you might be surprised by what they found. We'll break down the numbers and parse out what's real and what isn't, and explain what it could mean for the market in general as we enter the second half of 2024. That and more right after the short commercial break, so stick around. Landline Now returns right after this.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
Capital Reman is your leading source for quality remanufactured engines and components. Capital Reman stands ready to serve all OOIDA members to help reduce costly engine repairs or replacement. Visit capitalreman.com today and use code OOIDA10 to save.
Get the most power and performance out of your rig with Howe's Diesel Defender. It provides maximum lubricity and contains specialized IDX4 detergent to clean and prevent deposits and safely removes harmful water. Visit HowesProducts.com for more information.
Attention professional drivers, do you owe money to the IRS? Integrity Tax Relief Group frees drivers from IRS trouble. Call for help now, 855-976-4291. That's 855-976-4291.
It's tested and proven. Burn 2.1% less fuel when you balance all wheel ends with Centromatic. Call 800-523-8473 to get the OOIDA discount.
And we're back. It's no secret that spot market conditions over the past year and a half or so have been challenging, but a new survey shows that truckers and owner-operators in particular are starting to feel a bit better about the present and the future. Truckstop and Bloomberg Intelligence teamed up for this one, and joining us now to talk about it is Brent Hutto, Chief Relationship Officer at Truckstop. Brent, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Hey, Scott. It is always good to be on with you. Really appreciate what you do to keep the carrier marketplace informed and everything that WIDA does to defend the rights of all the great American truckers out there. So it's always just a joy to be on to continue to talk about the marketplace.
Yeah, which is exactly what we're going to do here. So you've teamed up with Bloomberg Intelligence, Truckstop has, to gauge how truck drivers were feeling out there after the first 3 months of the year, I guess during the first 3 months of the year as well.
Right.
Can you just start by telling us what the goal of these particular surveys is? What are you looking to find out?
Yeah, sure. Certainly fantastic. So we started a relationship with Bloomberg Financial. Bloomberg, everybody knows Bloomberg TV and all that. So they're a big, global group when it comes to all of the economic marketplaces around the world. And certainly America being the biggest one. They actually approached us and said, hey, we'd love this information on the market. You guys at Truckstop see a very unique part of the marketplace. It's the most fresh data in the market. We'd love to partner up with you guys so you could make your data resident on the Bloomberg terminals. Scott, there's I think last time I checked, there's over 300,000 Bloomberg terminals that these financial managers have on their computers that they pay worldwide. So it's a global distribution when we partner up with Bloomberg on what's going on in the American freight marketplace, especially mostly focused in the spot market, which has the greatest changes in it. So we've been partnered with Bloomberg for, I say 10 plus years. It's really been almost 15 years that we've been partnering with Bloomberg and providing data to them so the world can see what's going on specifically in the United States. But also we do these quarterly studies, which we started over 10 years ago, on what's going on with the carrier. How do they feel about the marketplace? That's one part of the segment. The other segment is what's going on with the broker and what do they feel about the marketplace. And so because sentiment's really important when it comes to people's opinions and emotions about what's going on when you're talking about financial markets.
And I'm going to ask you here in a few minutes what we can kind of take away from what we've learned here. But let's talk about who you talk to, because I think that is important. Anytime you're talking about a survey, the numbers of people you talk to and who you're talking to really tells you a lot about, what the numbers mean, right? So for this particular survey, for this quarterly sentiment survey, you spoke with, I think, 225 truck drivers, and was it all of them or a lot of them were owner-operators? What was the breakdown there?
Yeah, fantastic. So with Truckstop, we have about 80% of our audience, 85% of our audience are really truly are owner-operators. And so then that kind of 1 to 5, 1 to 7 category. But about 15% have more than 10 trucks. So the marketplaces, about 45%, you asked me the specific question. So we asked 225, which is a really good measurement. We try to get at least 200 every single survey. And they were in the dry van, flatbed, tip reefer, specialized. It's kind of all parts of the marketplace. And of those responses, 45% had just one tractor. So really that's sort of true OIDA member when it comes to these sort of for-hire owner-operator. And these are all for-hire owner-operators because you have to be for-hire to have access to the Truckstop.com load board.
And is that by design? I mean, speaking to smaller business truckers, does that give you a different sense or maybe a different viewpoint when you're looking at all of this? What is that? I guess what's the goal in speaking with smaller business truckers?
Yeah, so great. Another super great question. So the reason that you want feedback on this for-hire owner-operator part of the marketplace is because, and I'll just give you some numbers. Like I said, 85% of spot market carriers or spot market, trucking companies are firmly in the owner-operator category. So they're that small one truck, predominantly one truck, in which one truck owned and operated. And then there's a few more that go 2 to 5, and so then it kind of really tails off when it comes to. But the reason that you want feedback from this segment is because that's who hauls spot market freight.
Yeah.
Like, of the say, 150 million loads that move a year, and that's a lot. That's 150 million out of the 800 plus million that move every year. So the spot market moves a tremendous amount of the full truckload, which is that long haul full truckload freight. They move that freight. They are the dominant segment that moves that. So you want to ask this research questions of that segment because they're the ones that perform in that segment of the spot market. So, and that's why you don't go talk to Swift, you don't talk to Schneider, these other big companies, because they're not in the spot market to haul freight. They're typically in the spot market where their brokerage arm is moving excess freight that they can't move in the contract marketplace. So it's really unique. It's really important to ask the right candidate the question about how they feel about a marketplace.
Yeah, it makes sense. And let's have you answer that question based on their answers, I guess.
Really.
So overall, we're not
they feel.
Yeah, we're not going gangbusters here, but you did find that sentiment is improving out there. Run us through some of the more noteworthy numbers and feedback that you got.
Yeah, let me give you a few of those. And look, I'm going to go. This is a great press release that we've sent out, and we've talked about it in the marketplace. But we're talking about 2 different levels. Number one, kind of how they feel today, and then what's causing some of that. So, about no surprise, 62% of carriers reporting lower freight volumes in Q1. Well, lower freight volumes compared to what? They're really just looking back a year in the past, going, boy, there's not near as much freight in the marketplace because we just came out of the biggest market in the history of trucking since Carter had deregulation, okay, so 1980. But the interesting thing is that we've had over a year, Scott, of this, and I'm going to tell you right now, it is a normal freight availability market. There's the normal amount of freight. Actually, there's about 10% above normal that's available to the spot market carrier, the owner-operator right now. So it's just a normal market. But if you compare it to the pandemic, it's like less than half, right? Because there was 300% more freight in the marketplace. But the interesting thing is that because we've been doing it for over a year, 33% of them predict about the same over the next 3 to 6 months, and 19% I feel like there might be a decline. So there's this kind of back and forth on how they feel about what's going on, like our signs improving, that sort of thing. The majority of the carriers felt like they were sort of the better times around the corner because there's, the marketplace kind of bumps up and down. But I can just tell you that what's caused this, Scott, and this is what's really interesting, is as they look back at 21 and 22, really great market, a really great rate. You made a lot of money, which is fantastic for carriers. The Truckstop's all for that. But the freight rates in today's market make it feel even harder, more difficult for small companies because they got to negotiate one haul at a time. So that makes it more difficult in many markets and types of haul. There's still good freight out there, but overall, it's what a normalized market. But here's what's hurting: it's the inflation. Yeah. Inflation's really making it difficult across the board. We may talk a little bit more about that as we you and I talk. But that's kind of the overall what's going on. It's been around for a while. Sentiment's kind of coming back up because they're just adjusting to this market in normality, what it's going to be for quite a while.
Yeah, and that was kind of one of my questions for you, and I think maybe you kind of answered it there because this is kind of, when I look at sentiment, I kind of view it as a chicken-egg type situation. We as humans can feel all sorts of ways that don't sometimes match up with reality, right? So this improving sentiment kind of, it sounds like, does match the reality out there in some ways. Things maybe are getting better. You also wonder, too, is it wishful thinking? Is this something folks are trying to manifest? But again, it does seem like, based on sentiment, that we're heading in the right direction. I guess it's better than the alternative, where people feel horrible about the situation we're in and continue to feel that way. So that is a positive. This overall looks like a positive across the board, right?
Yeah, I would say so. I'd say what happens is we've reached the bottom of the curve of this market. It's not going to really go fundamentally any lower. It's gotten down to, the bottom part of the rates, part of the marketplace, the bottom part or the normalized part of the load availability. You said something I thought was really interesting where you talked about where the sentiment. This is what's interesting. So truckers, we've been going through this for over a year. right? So, we've kind of gotten used to it. So we know where the marketplace is going to be and how it's going to be. But I pulled this information, Scott. I thought this was a great comparative. You're talking about sentiment. This is so great. This was put out by Bloomberg as well. Listen to this. This is crazy. They polled 2,000 just U.S. consumers. This is what's interesting. 56% of U.S. consumers think that we're experiencing recession, even though we're not.
Yep.
That's interesting. 72% believe inflation is still going up, even though it's gone down from 9.1 to somewhere between 3 and 4%. 49% think current unemployment is at a 50-year high. It's at a 50-year low.
Yeah.
So, and 49% believe the S&P, so the stock market, is in decline, but it's actually in advance. It's actually increasing. So my point is sentiment is super important. Here's why. Because all the markets go on sentiment. Pricing goes on sentiment. Buying goes on sentiment. People aren't buying houses right now because it's still too expensive to buy them, but also there's a lot of cautiousness in the market. So truckers, we started to experience that like way back in October of 2022. We went all the way through 2023 with this big adjustment. Now we're in 2024. And truckers are like, well, okay, I've adjusted my business, and nobody, Scott, can adjust their business faster than a one truck owner operator because they can change in a day. And so that's really why you don't see a lot of the trucks like leaving the marketplace, that the ones that came in during the pandemic. So that's why you see a little bit of optimism because they can survive. They can just survive in this market because they've adjusted their business to it, even though I know it's difficult.
Yeah, it's very difficult for a lot of people out there, and we've seen that over the past couple of years with this down cycle here. The question, and we can maybe end with this. I also kind of want to get your advice for anybody out there that's still weathering the storm and still finding difficulties for sure. But, again, when we're talking about feelings, that's a very personal thing for folks out there, it's affecting them right on a daily basis. Right. On a grand scale, when we look at something like this, when we look at this survey and we get a sense that people are feeling a bit more optimistic, maybe cautiously optimistic, but feeling better about things, I guess if we were to kind of move that forward into what that means for the next several months, hopefully we will see some, greater progress here. But, as we look at all of this, what does it tell us about where we might be headed? Do you get any sense of that from all of this?
Yeah, the super great crystal ball question, man. I love it.
Yeah. And I love to throw it at people. Yeah.
Right. No, I think. And by the way, this is what I'm. You're asking the same question that every Wall Street person that calls me and asks me. Every trucking company CEO. I was just on stage with the CEO of RXO and talked to the guys at Knight Swift and all these. So, like, what do you see in the market? Because the spot market. Here's the great thing about the spot market. And I appreciate you asking this question. And so if you're a spot market carrier, if you're an owner operator, works in the spot market, and you're not just getting loads off the load boards. You're getting loads from brokers. You're actually moving some direct freight for shippers. I mean, kind of balance your business out. The thing to take away from this is that there's opportunity for you no matter what in this market. Because I can tell you right now that I pull every week. I talk about this every other week on Ashley's program. About where are the marketplace, where are the lanes that are seeing increases, and you're seeing great increases in different parts of the country. So this is where my big advice, first off, what's it going to look like the next 3 months? Likely a lot of the same. Let me answer your question first. Yeah. Likely a lot of the same, and here's why. We're going into an election cycle. The government, the existing administration is going to jack around with a few things like fuel costs and some other things to make people feel a little better. But so that'll be interesting to see how that happens. We're going into that. The consumer sentiment is still it's getting more cautious, as I talked about a second ago. That's why I brought it up. So that affects purchasing, and purchasing of goods hits trucks. That's why we had such a crazy great market during the pandemic, because we had like a 50% increase, 50% increase in goods purchasing. Yep. All those hit trucks. Well, most all of them hit trucks. So the point is you're going to see a lot of the same for the next 2 to 3 months. So my suggestion, and this is what I tell every owner-operator, every small carrier out there, is know how to use the data that you have available to you, whether it's on the load board, whether it's private data that you look at, whether it's the connections you have with brokers or shippers, the people that actually need the freight to be moved, and just continue to ask questions on where are the better markets.
Yep. Control what you can control is the main takeaway there.
Control your costs, too.
Yep.
Don't forget that. Control your costs so much. You got to get better than 6.5 miles per gallon, because that's what the fuel surcharge is based on. Please, whatever you do, try to run as efficiently as possible, because you can control that.
Yep. And don't accept cheap freight. That's the other takeaway there too. Hey, Brent, we'll have to leave it there. Unfortunately, we could talk to you forever, but That's all the time we have today. We appreciate it as always, and we'll talk to you again soon.
That'd be great. Thanks for all you guys are doing to help carriers and truckers out there.
Our thanks to Brent Hutto of Truckstop. Landline Now is back right after this.
Penske owns and operates some of the best-maintained vehicles on the planet. Our used trucks come with a 5-year maintenance report and pre-sale inspection. So if you're in the market for a top-quality pre-owned truck, look no further. Search our inventory today at PenskeUsedTrucks.com.
Control your toll costs and eliminate tolling headaches with Prepass Tolls. Prepass Tolls means toll volume discounts. Just one invoice for all tolls and fewer violations. Call 877-878-5970 or go to Prepass.com.
Ready to make more money? Use a better load board. For a limited time, get 50% off Truckstop Load Board Pro. Just go to truckstop.com/go and enter promo code READY2024 when you purchase Load Board Pro.
Landline Now, welcome back. It's not unusual for people to move from one state to another during their lifetime. In fact, some people will do that several times. But when you're a truck driver, that can have a significant impact on many aspects of your career, including your commercial driver's license. To get some insight into the ins and outs of changing states and your CDL, I talked with Alex Clark and David Grimes of CDL Legal. Well, we're talking today about the effect of changing your state of residence on your commercial driver's license. And I thought I would start off with what exactly is involved in changing your state of residence in terms of your CDL. What do you have to go through in order to do that?
Well, it just so happens that I have an answer to that. So that's always a good start. So it starts off with, they suggest that you visit the DMV. You don't have to initially. You could do all the paperwork details up to it, but at some point you're going to have to actually physically show up at the DMV, of course. And so they say, why not just do it all in one? And if you've got questions on the paperwork, you don't do something wrong and it extends the process. Kind of like when I had to go do my license, you have to prove your address. So you can use a utility bill or a bank statement, or my personal favorite, a letter from the IRS that shows your address. And at that point, let's see, in some states, now some of these are not for all states, but in some states, there may be, you have to retake portions of the CDL test, including the written skills test. I'm not sure. It says the requirements vary by state. I'm not sure, what it is, but obviously you're going to the DMV. You might call them and ask them beforehand, because you don't want to get down there and then have a pop quiz and forget something. And then this one is critical. You got to present your medical examiner certificate. And I don't know how this happens, but we get a number of people. Well, I don't know what the number is, but we've gotten, a number of cases over time where they get stopped and the new state doesn't have record of their medical certificate. And they're like, well, I got it right here. Here it is. They want to show it. But if you don't, if they haven't actually gotten it verified into their state system, then you're going to get written up, put out of service as not having a valid driver's license. So you always want to make sure of that. And I don't know how to do it. I don't know. You would think you're at the DMV, they do commercial driver's license. You would think they would ask, but sometimes you just can't necessarily rely on that. And then in some places, well, or not in some places, but if you're applying to add a hazmat endorsement to your license, you need to have the fingerprints done. And what's the last? Oh, and here's another important thing. I've seen some guys get pinched for having their old state license with a new license, or or they go, 6 months, a year, and never transferred over their license. So that's pretty typical for anybody. If I moved to Missouri, and I've got a Kansas license a year later, it might not be as big a deal, but still supposed to be done. The one thing you can't do is you can't transfer your CDL to another state. It's not just an automatic process. You've got to go through the, you got to go through the process no matter what.
Okay. Well, let's talk about how the change of state of residence might affect that CDL and things linked to it. And of course, we need to start with the MVR, or motor vehicle record. Before we get into that, of course, we've always got new people in the industry. So I'm wondering if you can kind of explain what the MVR, or motor vehicle record, is and why is it important to a trucker?
Sure. It's a record of any and all violations that you might have. Accidents will show up on the MVR sometimes, depending on whether it's a federally reportable or not. David, can you help me here for a minute?
Yeah. So an MVR is going to be basically the record of everything that you've done as a driver. Usually what you'll see on an MVR is your certifications and restrictions, your any tickets that you've gotten, and any crashes that you've been involved in. There's a few other minor things as well, but those are the main things that you should be aware of. So drivers with a CDL or certain other qualifications will have those listed on their MVR, and then things that would usually affect their insurance rates or their ability to get a new job are going to be on there also. The crashes and the tickets that you've gotten over time.
You mentioned the crashes and the tickets and so on. Different states handle different violations in different ways. Is there a change in terms of your MVR when you change states, or is that consistent across state lines? What happens to that information?
Well, it shouldn't change. Now, I don't know what happens exactly when you change states based on a violation that may have a different connotation in the state you move to. But all of those are going to be, reported. The one thing that we have found that has happened is in the midst of getting a violation dismissed in North Carolina, the driver, like right around that time, moved to South Carolina. So he went through this process that we just talked about earlier, and didn't really check his MVR record. And in not checking his MVR record, what he found out, I'm not sure, I'm kind of making up numbers here, but 3, 6, 9 months later, that a violation that was dismissed on a ticket in North Carolina, and then it was dismissed, it was South Carolina ticket. It was dismissed, and then when he transferred over, they somehow reported it as not dismissed, and he's been trying to fight that now. They're trying to get the courts, in South Carolina to send record of it, but it's a really lengthy process. And it's not fun, as most people know, dealing with the DMV. So that's one thing to look out for. You should be checking, should always be checking your MVR to make sure it's correct. But particularly now that we've seen this, we're going to tell drivers to make sure you pull a copy before it gets sent over.
Well, one of the things that is kind of creeping in the background of our conversation are points on the license. And different states, again, assign points differently. When you change states, do they carry over points from the old state? Do they adjust the violations to the new point system? Could you be looking at something that's 3 points against your license in your old state and suddenly you're facing 6 points because you've moved states? Does that happen or does it transfer over?
The violations transfer over, but the points are going to be then on the state of, where you're at now. Now, like in Illinois, you could have a real culture shock. You could have a speeding 10 over, and in your state, that's a 1-point violation. And in Illinois, that might be a 15-point violation. But, and there is a but to this, is that your state may take 6 points and, run your license, or Illinois, it might be like 100 points. I wish I could remember the state now. I was looking a few weeks ago at the violation on points, and I'm like, holy cow. But their point system goes up to 200 before you're going to be, run out. But that could be 3 tickets in, 18 months. Because the tickets are 50, 75 points. So don't panic if you see your points go up. Make sure you know exactly, how the system works.
Wow.
Mark, something that's kind of important to note here is that the way that points usually affect your license, like the possibility of getting a suspension or even fined or your CDL certification taken away, usually it's not exactly what the points are, it's how many of them you have close together. So older violations that are from your previous state aren't even going to affect you in the new state's calculations, because it's only those new violations coming on and how close together they stack your recent driving behavior that the state's really concerned about.
Okay. I want to kind of run a scenario by you, and we have a couple of minutes left here, but this is a question I ran into online recently. It's kind of related to that. And it sounds in some senses a little bit, Alex, like what you mentioned earlier. It's a man who lived in one state and moved to Florida for a short time, transferred his CDL, and then transferred it back to his original state when moving back there. Well, after he had left Florida and transferred that CDL back, Florida suspended his license, and apparently it was for insurance lapsing in his personal vehicle. But he was no longer a resident of Florida and did not have his license there. And the other state lists his CDL as valid, which Florida does not. What kind of is going on in a situation like this? Can a state suspend your license there and it remain valid in your new home state?
We've had these cases come up. They can go back. I mean, we always talk about, 3-year time for suspending licenses. I had a guy got a ticket in Denton, Texas, and he got put under suspension because he had another serious violation 10 years ago. And I, we're calling up, the courts and going, well, wait a minute, how can that possibly affect him? And they fought it, got an attorney, and he lost. He lost because I don't know, apparently. So if he's got a violation in Florida, he needs to go back and find out if there's a fine related to it, because if Florida drops his license, that's going to show up in the SIDLA system somewhere. And the officers, when they pull him over, would find that. They find everything. And it won't matter that he wasn't living in the state at the time they actually got around to suspending him. And Florida, that's one thing. Florida takes license plate and license mishaps more seriously than just about any other state in the union. It's sometimes, or most often, a misdemeanor, not just an infraction. Wow is right.
Well, guys, we've run out of time for this topic, but thank you very much for all the information.
All right. Thanks, Mark.
I've been talking with David Grimes and Alex Clark of CDL Legal, a legal service provider for the trucking industry, about the effect on your CDL and MVR when you change states of residence. We'll be back in just a moment with more news and information. Please stay with us through a short commercial break. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Are you tired of the IRS following you around like a dark cloud? Call 888-557-4020 and get your life back.
Firestone tires are for more of everything, with more durability for more miles and more confidence in your fleet. Firestone's tested tires help fleets save with value where it matters most. Learn more at bridgestonenationalfleet.com/4moremiles.
Today's rising costs affect everyone. Replace your harmonic damper with a genuine Vibrotech TVD viscous damper to prevent costly repairs and downtime. Keep your money in your pocket and your truck on the road with Vibrotech TVD. Recommended replacement at 500,000 miles or 15,000 hours.
Since you started, what you've loved about trucking is the freedom. Heading out on your favorite route, a good driving song, and thinking about truck insurance. Well, maybe not that last one. That's why we're here. At OOIDA, we have a full range of truck insurance products, expert advice, and great customer service, helping you get the right coverage for your operation. Go to OOIDA.com, because your job is to drive. Our job is to help with everything else.
Landline Now, welcome back. There are a number of critical questions you need to answer in order to run a successful trucking business. Among the most important of those questions are, where's the freight going to be and how much is it going to pay? Today, Landline Now senior correspondent Ashley Blackford will bring us answers to both of those important questions with a look at this week's freight markets with the folks from DAT. Here's Ashley now with the report.
Thanks, Mark, and hello to Stephen Pettit with DAT. How are you doing today, Stephen?
I'm fine, Ashley. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Now,
Good.
Memorial Day is behind us. We're heading into June, which is always a busy month for the spot freight. Where is the spot market headed as we move toward the start of summer?
Yeah, so it is. It's very much a seasonal effect, right? So summer and back-to-school retail are moving through ports and big warehouse markets. Domestic produce harvests, they're in full swing across much of the country's growing regions. And goods are moving through processing plants and cold storage facilities, distribution centers. Last week of June is the peak of seasonal reefer freight as grocers stock up for the July 4 holiday. You know, that day before the 4th of July is one of the busiest grocery shopping days of the year. On the spot market, we see flatbed activity. It's typically driven by new home construction at this time of year. It's just more productive in the summer and the fall. As we move into June, also, there's always the threat of weather disrupting supply chains. We saw that over the weekend with severe storms in the Midwest, kind of where you are, and also along the East Coast. June, just as a reminder, is the official start of hurricane season. Again, these are all seasonal factors to consider on the spot market. I think if you've been trucking for a while, you know that June is about sort of making hay while the sun shines. I can't say it's really a cloudless sky, but the next month should give truckers more loads to choose from, especially for van and reefer freight. I think on the flatbed side, home builders are really pessimistic about this year, mostly because buyers are being cautious due to the uncertainty around future interest rates. And, you know, manufacturers that use flatbeds on the spot market, they're not really driven by seasonality, but more by demand. I think DAT has seen an overall increase in load posting activity recently. You know, last week, look at May 19th through the 25th, load posts on DAT1 topped 2.34 million for the second week in a row. It's the first time that's happened since the middle of January when winter storms drove more freight to the load board. Of course, you know, it was the week before Memorial Day. It's a very busy time. Demand for trucks on the spot market tends to be elevated at that time. The question, you know, is demand sustainable beyond beyond this weekend and into the next 4 to 6 weeks and beyond? That's really the question.
If there are more loads to choose from, what does that mean for spot rates? Do truckers have better negotiating power now?
So the number of loads on the load board last week, it was about the same as it was last year, 2.35 million loads. Number of trucks posted is down 23% year over year. Laws of supply and demand would say that, yes, truckers are in a better position, but spot rates really have not moved beyond the increases that you might expect leading into the Memorial Day holiday or during road check for that matter. Load to truck ratios last week, these are the number of loads on the load board relative to the number of trucks. They also didn't move very much. Vans averaged 4.8 loads per truck on DAT1, reefers 6.9, flatbeds 18.3. These load to truck ratios are about the same as they were the previous week, and about the same as they were again last year. That lack of movement is reflected in the spot rates. National average van rate, $2.01 a mile. That's up a penny from the previous week. Reefer rate, $2.40 a mile, up 5 cents. Again, some seasonal issues there. Flatbed rate, $2.53 a mile, unchanged from the previous week. These are national average rates based on invoices for loads moved from May 19th through the 25th. Averages, of course, they're great, but that rate that really matters is the one that you negotiate with the broker. Every load, every lane, every day is its own opportunity.
What's the market to watch this week? Where can truckers find freight?
Yeah, sure. So let's look at two markets. Or maybe a region. So high volume van lanes in the Southeast. This is that summer retail that we were talking about, where demand and spot rates build from now through the end of June. So the van load to truck ratio in Atlanta, big market obviously for freight, has averaged 6.9 over the last week. Savannah, another market to watch, averaged 16.5, both well above the national average for vans. A couple lanes to watch. Atlanta to Philadelphia averaged 255 a mile. The van rate on that lane typically peaks on the 30th of June, when it's projected to reach right around $3 a mile. Atlanta to Lakeland, that's Orlando in Central Florida, averaged 296 a mile last week. It too peaks on June 30th. You want a good rate going into Florida in June because loads coming out are scarce. A market that, again, has been interesting to watch is the Port of Savannah. Container traffic increased about 8% compared to last year, partly due to diversions from the Port of Baltimore. Port of Baltimore is now open to commercial traffic, and this week there's a 50-foot deep, 400-foot wide channel that should be open around the clock, giving priority access to those deep draft vessels. Flatbed haulers have seen more opportunity in Savannah with kind of that diverted roll-on, roll-off traffic, which involves non-containerized imports like vehicles and heavy equipment. So Savannah is a market to watch in the coming weeks. Another one, again, seasonally to look at, Nogales, Arizona. It's a major gateway for Mexican produce. It's in DAT's Tucson market, where the reefer load to truck ratio is above 15. That's more than double the national average. Produce imports via Nogales are down 12% compared to this time last year, but truckload capacity for loads of vegetables and watermelons has been tightening in that market. Spot reefer rates out of Nogales are up 7% over the last month, which is in line with seasonal expectations. Nogales to Chicago, averaging 276 a mile. Rates on this lane typically peak around June 15th, when they're forecast to be around $3 a mile.
Now, last week, legislation was introduced to enhance the FMCSA's ability to crack down on freight fraud, including double brokering. With summer here and more freight being posted to load boards, what can truckers do to reduce the risk of falling victim to fraud?
I think, when you hear the term freight fraud, I don't know, I think of the load, but I think what most bad guys really want is your identity. It's really easy to fool people into giving up a username and a password. It's easier to do that than it is to hack into an account or physically go out and jack a trailer. What does this type of scheme look like in a freight transaction? This is an example. I think of a story of a report from a carrier to our network integrity unit, which investigates potential fraud on the load board. Carrier responded to a broker's post on the network. As they negotiated terms, the broker asked the carrier about a negative review written by another broker. Carrier says, "What do you mean? I don't have any negative reviews." So the broker sends a link to a page where the carrier can log in with their DAT username and password to see the review. Page and URL look like a legitimate page, but they really exist only to capture the carrier's login credentials. I mean, it's a classic phishing scheme. And it's really easy to get fooled, particularly on the spot market where transactions are taking place electronically. They happen quickly. They're conducted between parties that may never meet face-to-face. I think everybody's got to be vigilant about who they do business with, and you have to consider everybody's perspective. I think double brokering takes many forms, right? So say you're an owner-operator, you got a load you can't handle, so you subcontract the job to another carrier without telling the broker or the shipper, like, what's the harm, right? You don't want to disappoint the customer. You're not doing anything malicious. The person hauling the load is a buddy, maybe somebody you know and trust. but it's double brokering, right? There's no co-brokering agreement to outline the expectations or requirements or payments. You're facilitating the unauthorized movement of a load. I think, on our website, DAT's got a number of practical tips to help you verify the person that you're dealing with is a bona fide representative of the broker and the carrier. They are who they say they are. Visit dat.com/fraud-prevention for more information. And if you see something suspicious, be sure to report it.
All right, Stephen, thank you so much.
Anytime, Ashley. Thanks so much.
That was Stephen Pettit with DAT. Mark, back to you.
Thanks, Ashley. That's our program for today. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm Mark Reddig, and this is Landline Now.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
I'm a dad,
a son,
a husband,
wife,
I'm a writer,
photographer.
I farm.
I'm a veteran.
I love old cars, fishing,
my kids,
Chrome.
And I am
a professional truck driver.
And together we are OOIDA.
OOIDA was founded by truckers to stand up and speak on behalf of truckers. We've done that by combining the individual voices of our members into a single, powerful voice. Protecting your interests, defending your rights.
Join us! Make your voice heard. Join OOIDA, the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association. Call 1-800-444-5791 or visit OOIDA.com.